So do you want to switch from Windows to Linux, but there's something stopping you? For example, maybe there's a program that you've got that only runs on Windows and you use it all the time. It's not a big program like Office or something like that. It's some program that you use. You say, I can't live without this program. Otherwise, I would switch over to Linux. Well, today I'm going to tell you that there is a way, a secret trick that allows you to run all Windows programs on Linux, including that odd program that you've got that you've been using to do whatever it is that you do for the last 10 years and you need it, that will run as well. So if you want to find out more, please let me explain. Now, before we dive into this, I would just like to point out I do have a video talking about the mindset that you need when you're switching from Windows to Linux, and really the mindset is not to try to make Linux do everything you did on Windows. It's to find alternative solutions. Just as if you were moving from Windows to the Mac, for example, Apple has its own apps for office stuff and for video editing and for media stuff. So you don't just try to use the same Windows apps, you go with a new ecosystem. Now, I'll leave a link to that video in the description below, but let's assume that you're trying that. You're going to go as much as you can with the Linux stuff, but there is this program that you need that you have to run and you have to have it and you need it on Linux and you can't. Well, I'm going to tell you how you can run it on Linux. Now, the way you're going to do it is actually by using an app called Winboat. And it's actually really a clever trick. So get this, what you actually do with Winboat is you secretly run a copy of Windows in the background. So in a containerized environment, so in a Docker image, for those of you that know what those are, it's kind of in the background. And then when you want to launch a specific Windows program, it launches it in that kind of virtual environment and then displays the app on your normal Linux display. So you get full Windows compatibility. And because you're running really a copy of Windows in the background in this virtual environment, everything will run on it because it's Windows. It's not trying to emulate Windows. It's not trying to copy Windows. It's not trying to pretend to be Windows. It is Windows. And when you have that app running, it displays it seamlessly integrated with all your other Windows. You can move it around and enlarge it and everything else you would do the same, but it's actually a Windows app running. So you do that with this app called Winboat. So I'm going to show you how to install Winboat. I'm using Debian Linux for this. I'm going to show you to download the .deb file and how you run it. We're then going to go through the setup process, and then we're going to run some of the apps that you get with Windows, like Calculator or PowerShell, for example. And then we're going to install just a Windows app from the internet. Actually, it's paint.net, which is a really good paint program for Windows that's free, and show you that you can just run that in the middle of your Linux environment using Winboat. And then after all that, at the very end, we'll go through some of the frequently asked questions, because there are one or two gotchas that you need to just be aware of. Okay then, so you need to go over to winboat.app. That's the website. Of course, this is a Linux only program, so you need to go to the download section and actually pick the distribution type that you're using. As I mentioned, I'm going to be using Debian, and so I'm just going to download that .deb file. Once it's downloaded, I can see it in my file explorer, and there I can right hand click on that file and actually open it with the software installer, which will allow me to install it directly from this package. So I'll go over and click install. Need to type in my password so that it can run as the administrator, as super user, and that will go ahead and install. Once it's installed, I can access it from the start menu. Just type in Win there to get the search Winboat. Click on that and up will come the app. Now, welcome to Winboat. Nice welcome screen there. And we can move our way through the different steps here. So I'm going to agree to the license agreement. And now here it's checking the prerequisites. Now it's very important that all these prerequisites are installed. Now the most difficult one here is Docker and FreeRDP. And if you notice, next to each one, it says how ? Now when you click on that, it will actually take you to a comprehensive set of instructions on how to install that piece of software. Now if you're new to Linux, this could seem daunting. However, I just say you need to trust the instructions and actually go through them in verbatim. Don't try and shortcut anything. Do exactly what it says and you will successfully install Docker and FreeRDP. Now it's best to do a reboot after you have both of those things fully installed, and then when the desktop comes up again, you're able to go over and run Winboat again. Now you're going to go through those first initial steps again, the welcome screen, accepting the license. But now when you get to the prerequisites, you will see that everything is okay, so we can proceed further. Now the next question is, where would you like it to store all of these things it's doing? So /home/Gary, that's your username, in my case Gary. Winboat is absolutely fine, and then it's going to ask you which version of Windows do you want, and you can pick from different versions, you can pick from different languages, you can even specify your own ISO file if you want to. Next up, you need to create a user for use inside of Windows. So I'm going with Gary, along with a standard password that I use. Now here's an important step. You're going to select the hardware configuration of the Windows machine. How much of your CPU do you want it to use? How much of your RAM do you want it to use? How much disk space do you want it to use? So I'm going here with 2 cores. I'm going with 4 GB of RAM, and I'm going to actually make a slightly bigger hard drive. Now, depending on the size of your processor, depending on how much RAM you've got, you can select these accordingly. I certainly wouldn't give over any more than half of your RAM to the Windows machine running here in this containerized environment. However, do choose according to how much you've got. Next up, it asks you whether you want to share your home folders between your Linux machine and your Windows machine. I will go with that. However, it does offer you a warning that any viruses that might come into Windows could then have access also to your Linux files. Obviously, that is something to consider, but just the ease of use of having both of those available to talk to each other is actually really, really convenient. So I've enabled it. And then finally, you get a summary of what's going on before you go ahead and click that install button. Now, the installation does take quite a while because, for example, it's downloading Windows 11 and then it has to install it and so on. So do go and grab yourself a hot drink while this happens. Now there is a link where you can check the installation status in your browser, and as you can see here, it's actually showing you the Windows installation screen showing you Windows actually being installed. Now once that's completed, you can then go back to the Winboat app, and you can see you have a lovely dashboard here that tells you how much CPU is being used, how much RAM is being used, how much disk space is being used by that Windows 11 Pro, in this case, virtualized environment. If you then click on apps, what will actually come up is a list of all the apps that are available for you to run straight away. Now, for example, I can run the Windows calculator, and up it will come, and notice here it's just a window here on my desktop, and I can use it just like I would use any other application. I can also run something like the Windows terminal, bring up PowerShell here, and look, I've got PowerShell running on my Linux distro. In fact, if you look there, C users Gary, it's actually inside that Windows virtual environment. So let's say I wanted to use paint.net, which, as I said, is a freeware paint program, and I can go over to the getpaint.net website and I can click the download to actually get that installable. Now this is my Linux environment, so I'm actually downloading this on the Linux side, as it were. I'm going to use it on the Windows side in a moment. So here in my downloads folder, I'm going to extract the contents of that .zip file. Again, this is on the Linux side of things. Now to install it, what I do is I go back into Winboat, I click on the Windows File Explorer, which will actually bring up the File Explorer showing me the files in Windows, in the Windows environment, and then I can actually go and find my installation program. And I do that by going to Network, and then into host.lan, and then Data, and then of course it's in my downloads folder, as I showed you a minute ago, and there's that .exe. I can now double click on it and start the installation just as I would on a native Windows environment. Paint.net will go through its normal setup, installing it just as you would expect, and then once it's installed we can run it. So here it is running in my Linux environment. However, it's using Windows in that virtual environment, and I'm actually running it here and able to use it without any problems whatsoever. Okay, I said we'd look at a few of the frequently asked questions. First, too important here, how does it compare to WinApps? It's a very similar program. With WinApps, you do the bulk of the setup manually. So Winboat basically takes care of a lot of that for you. So it downloaded Windows and installed it for us. How is it better than Crossover or Wine? Well, basically because it's not trying to do emulation, it's actually using Windows itself. Then you can find that a whole bunch of tools like Affinity Photo, and the entire Adobe suite and Acrobat and of course Office all run using this method very easily. Now, here's an important one. Will Windows be activated? No, of course not. It's a trial version of it downloads. If you want to get hold of a license, you need to deal with that all yourself. Is there any GPU acceleration? No, not at the moment. And that means it's not particularly good at running games. And the last question, can you run Office 365? Yes, of course you can. So other questions there maybe that interest you, do check out the FAQ there on the winboat.app website. Okay, so they have it, Winboat, a great way to move over to Linux, but still, if you've got something essential you need on Windows, it will let you run that application. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider doing a few things. 1, give it a thumbs up. That really helps me here on this channel. 2, don't forget to subscribe so you catch other videos that I release here. Also 3, consider joining my YouTube membership. That helps me along to produce these videos. Okay, that's it. I'll see you in the next one.